This is where the fun begins.
The Lord Be With You podcast show, also known as Sports Fandom Geek on YouTube, is a Red 5 show, also affiliated with Fandom Collective. So, enjoy the show, and the Force will be with you very soon on the Lord Be With You podcast show.
There's one. Set for stun.
Okay. So, how you doing, man, anyway?
I'm good, man. I'm cool.
You've been busy. You've been like super busy.
Yeah, especially with the pup. The pup's it's taking up a lot of time.
Oh my gosh, dude! Being into the old animals, man. God bless your heart.
Yeah, it's been cool though.
The only ones that I'm interested in are the ones that are on the plate. That's it. I'm such a Bond villain. The animal rights people are like, you can't say that. I just did. Oh,
cool.
Dude, you've got I bet there's loads of the guys on the show that loads of the fans of the show that's kind of missed you on there kind of thing. So that's cool. So what we could do, we could kind of do this AEW part on here, and then I'll send you the link and then we can do the Marvel part on Anchor. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's cool. Okay, so talk to me, dude. Okay, so obviously in the world of, this is obviously guys at home, if you're catching this stream afterwards, this is the Lord Be With You podcast show. This is a bit of a kind of initial stream. We're going to do more of them in the future. It's just a case of it's just a way of making the show a bit more interactive with fans and then and with you guys at home that are listeners. If you're catching this stream after the fact, I know a lot of the guys in the States listen to the show, so you might be catching it afterwards. Might be a bit early for some of you guys right now. Hello and welcome, and glad to get you on here. So there's every time I'm going on Twitter, there's always something going on trending about AEW or something going on with AEW. It's always like some superstar from WWE going across to AEW wrestling, and from time to time I'll look on what's going on AEW, and it's at the moment it seems like they've set the world on fire in terms of sports entertainment. So Omar, you're a big wrestling guy like myself.
Yes.
We were going to have, the initial plan was going to be to get Stephen Harper on, because he's also a big wrestling guy who has his own wrestling YouTube channel and things like that. But Stephen's got some stuff going on, so he couldn't quite make this one. But we will get Stephen Harper on again to have a bit of a debate with Omar. But just tell me, just going in now, a brief conversation. What do you think's going on with WWE? There's a lot of stuff going on with WWE releasing a lot of big name talent, and it's like Vince McMahon is completely emptying their locker room, and then half of them are going across to AEW. So what do you make of what's going on at the moment?
I think it's just a bit of a crazy time right now. AEW's just turned 2 now, and they've really shown their mettle, shown that they are kind of an alternative to WWE for the first time in over 20 years since WCW. I mean, there was that kind of time, early 2000s, when TNA was started to become something known, but then they kind of emulated WWE to the point that they weren't WWE and kind of fell back. They're now Impact, but it's a very entertaining time to be a pro wrestling fan right now.
Man, it's really exciting, isn't it? I mean, I think it's amazing. And you do look at AEW, even the way the design of the ring and how the setup is with the ramp and the visuals, the wording, the graphics of the show. It does feel like Nitro. It feels like a 90s WCW, WCW at its peak. It gives me those sort of vibes.
Well, that is kind of the idea behind it. Tony Khan, the president of and CEO of AEW, he's a massive wrestling fan for many years, and he did say that before Dynamite launched, which is their main flagship show, that he watched Nitro all the way through again, and he said that's the kind of feel that he wanted for the show. So it is a direct kind of homage to the old Nitro of WCW in AEW.
I mean, the thing is, like, I remember that, like, growing up, watching wrestling, and my early experiences of wrestling wasn't actually WWF. It was WCW, and it was guys like, it was Sting and Ric Flair, Two Gold Scorpio, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, all these like Ron Simmons coming along. So all these like big names, some of these amazing, like iconic names in wrestling. I mean, I think growing up, for me, if I was kind of really like narrowing it down, I'd be going, who was my favorite guys? It would be Two Gold Scorpio, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Sting. They were my guys. They were my guys, man. I was all over those guys, and absolutely loved it. And then to the WWF side, obviously wasn't WWE back then. You were looking at Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart for me. They were like, oh man, it was fire. It was absolutely amazing. So that was sort of for me back then. And obviously I think for me back then, it was apparent that even though I was young and experiencing wrestling for the first time, it seemed like a good thing that there was two strong companies that were going at it. I think it was good for both companies that they both had a rival that could kind of push them to make their product even greater.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, for me, I started off with WWF as the first time I watched wrestling. I used to watch it at my aunt's house. Back in the day, I think it was SummerSlam 90, I think it was. I remember that. I remember watching that with Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and that. But for me, I didn't really care about the heavyweight title scene. I was always a fan of the Intercontinental Championship. So,
oh really?
So at that time, this is before like Bret got his push to be like world champion. It was when Bret was IC champion. That's what I was more interested in. Hitman will always be my favorite wrestler of all time. But like, at that time it was like Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. It was all those kind of guys that got me into wrestling. And then I did watch WCW, and it used to come on a Saturday afternoon. WCW Worldwide. I actually remember my first wrestling show I ever went to was a WCW show with Sting and stuff like that. But
nice.
At that time, it was great to have two opposing kind of things, and they pushed each other. I mean, the Attitude Era would never have happened if it wasn't for the NWO.
Of course. I mean, and obviously Attitude Era. Oh my gosh! I mean, obviously, like, on WCW's side, you've got like Kevin Nash, you've got Scott Hall, you've obviously got Goldberg, you've got Diamond Dallas Page, you've got Booker T, Mr. Spinner Rooney. You got those. I mean, Ric Flair at that time was at WCW as well. So you had all those big hitters on that side of things, and obviously Goldberg ended up being the franchise guy. And then, it was like, okay, and obviously you're not even saying that. You've got Hulk Hogan rocking a black beard.
Hollywood.
I tell you what, I know there's issues with Hulk Hogan. We know there's issues with Hulk Hogan, especially with some of the stuff that came out afterwards with racism and things that he said. But growing up, like Hollywood Hogan back in the day, oh man, that guy was fire back in the day. Hollywood Hogan back in the day, he was such a great heel. He really was.
But for me, his in-ring work was not my thing, but his character work was always quite fantastic. So we had that, and then we had the fall of WCW. And we had the kind of brand split in WWF, then WWE, and I kind of fell out of love with wrestling for a while, during that period. I used to watch it through uni. I had a uni roommate who was very much into wrestling. He went to WrestleMania. He actually spent his student loan to go to WrestleMania 20 in New York.
Spending your student loan.
Yeah, he
Spending your
literally
student
spent
loan
it.
to go to WrestleMania.
Yeah, he did. He spent three days in New York to go watch. He was front seat in WrestleMania 20.
That's absolutely brilliant. A big
Which
shout
is
out
crazy.
to God's Geeks. He's put a comment on here. WCW era was the best time in wrestling history. After that, I quit watching. Well, God's Geeks, it was a good era. I think you probably get some agreement with us here. It was a fantastic era. Thank you for coming on the stream and leaving a comment as well, dude. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
But for me now, I think this era right now is one of the most interesting eras.
So talk a bit more. So if we got someone like God's Geek listening, playing this on the YouTube now, how can we evangelize to God's Geeks to get him over to like wrestling now? What can we do, Omar? What's so interesting about the era that we've got now?
Well, the thing is that right now, because we are in a kind of an internet era now, we're exposed to a lot more. So back in the day, there were independent kind of promotions out there, but we didn't really have access to them. But now we do. So for me, like my kind of real kind of running, my like current running kind of following wrestling happened because of New Japan and getting into kind of New Japan wrestling. Especially when AJ Styles from TNA, when he moved over to New Japan.
Oh man, AJ Styles, AJ Styles.
But then he joined the Bullet Club, which is, well, at that time was the amazing faction. I mean, if it wasn't for Bullet Club, we wouldn't have AEW, because I mean it kind of born out of that. So AEW was born after kind of a bet online on Twitter where Dave Meltzer, who's like a massive kind of wrestling kind of reporter, said that no indie promotion could fill a 10,000 person arena outside of WWE. Cody Rhodes, the son of Dusty Rhodes, said, "I'll take you up on that," and him and the Young Bucks promoted their own indie show called All In, which kind of, but out of that came AEW. But what was great about even All In was that it was kind of like a culmination of all the indie performers from different promotions in one show, and that's kind of what the ethos behind what AEW are doing now, where the doors open, where they have their main roster, but then other people from other promotions can just come in, and it just makes it so much more exciting, because not only are people like following other indie promotions now, but also they're getting the rub from watching AEW, going, "Oh, who is this guy?" and kind of watching what's happening with like kind of the other promotions like that.
Yeah, so that is really interesting that they're so engaging, and it's a very different cultural sort of thing from what was happening with WWE. WWE seemed to be a very closed shop, and obviously that's the way that Vince McMahon runs WWE. And it's quite interesting now. Omar, I want to get your perspective on this. I remember a promo with Paul Heyman. And obviously Paul Heyman works for WWE and whatnot, but Paul Heyman's a wrestling guy. He's been with several different promotions and things like that.
Well, he owned ECW.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's a wrestling guy, and I remember him doing this promo, and I think when I listened to do this promo against Vince McMahon, I thought, hang on a minute, is he speaking like some truth here, like in the thing? And he spoke about Vince McMahon's father, and that Vince McMahon's father said that he wouldn't run against other promotions in terms of like kind of trying to push them out of business type thing, and that Vince went against that promise. And I just remember this promo, and obviously, I think it was an official promo, but it almost seemed like like Paul Heyman was speaking some truth within that sort of within the promo sort of thing. I always wondered about that. Like, was he, was he really like? Was there a lot of honesty in what he was saying to Vince in this promo? I don't know if you ever come across it, but it was I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, there's an element of truth because it was a gentleman's agreement that before the 80s there was a territories, and you didn't. The whole thing was you don't poach another man's territory, but basically Vince Jr. he basically bought up all the territories pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's how WWF became so prominent, because of that. So there is an element of truth to that.
Yeah.
All the southern kind of territories culminated in Jim Crockett Promotions, which eventually became WCW, but pretty much everything else was WWF. So yeah, there is some truth in that. That's there was some ruthlessness. I mean, he did pay off a whole load of guys to join WWF. When they were in the territories. I mean, even Hulk Hogan was in, I think it was in AWA before he got big.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that's how
that's it. So obviously going back to Tony Khan. Tony Khan's done a complete paradigm shift, a complete different direction to WWE, and they're engaging with New Japan, and there's other promotion. I mean, obviously they're engaging with TNA.